am going to call to order the reorganizational meeting of the Jackson School Board. Is there any nomination for chair?
I nominate Jen Salter as chair.
Is there a second?
Yes, I second.
Are there any other nominations for chair? Discussion.
Yay, Jen, we very much appreciate you.
All those in favor, Jen Salter as chair of the Jackson School Board.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, motion passes. Jen, meeting is yours.
All those, did you vote yes?
Abstain.
No, it's abstained.
Yeah.
Did you get that one? I figured we had another.
Election of vice chair, I nominate Jerry. Second.
Any discussion?
You know, but we're all pretty much going to be in favor of the vote.
All right. All those in favor? All right, great. Thank you, Jerry.
You're abstaining or you voted?
Yeah.
At what point what did you do to make it not say chairman? And it was
Chairperson.
And vice chairman?
Well, this says chairperson.
Okay, but in our packet, it says chairman.
Yes.
That'd be awesome to get that correct. Thank you. Set meeting dates and time, third Monday of the month at 6 o'clock. Does that still work for everybody?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Favor?
No.
Okay. Adopt rules of order, agenda format.
So I guess technically,
There you go.
on the other one, I make a motion to set the meeting date and time as the first Monday at 6 o'clock. Yes.
Third.
Third Monday.
Third Monday, sorry. And, oh, we don't do it?
Yeah, it's already said that's.
Oh, okay. Sorry. On the fourth one here, though, if you want to consider a few different things here. First, I would make a motion to adopt Robert Rules format. But on the agenda, I would like to make a motion to take citizen comments off the agenda for now. And I want to make a motion that, it's okay.
Yeah, you can.
Start discussion right away. This one we have to like consider, or doesn't consider at all. I don't approach it very lightly anyway. But it's important for us to be able to control the discussion of what happens in the room when it comes to private and sensitive information. And if we allow public comments, we can't control what people say. And if we allow public comments, we have to allow everyone the chance to have public comments. And we can't say, you know, this person can talk or this person can't. So we can't control who says things and who doesn't. And so our solution to that would be to take public comments off of the agenda. And we certainly have the authority to do that. And what we would replace it with, if you wanted on the agenda, you want to have discussions in front of the board in our public meeting, you would have to submit a written request of the topic to the chairperson or superintendent 7 days prior to our meeting. Then it would be up to the chairperson or the superintendent as to whether or not that gets put on the agenda or not. And if it does, then we would have a discussion in public about that then. And that's kind of the reasoning behind it. Hopefully, sometime in the future, we might be able to go back to an agenda where we allow citizen comments on the agenda. But it also has to do with the fact that we're here to do the town's business. And a lot of what's been brought to us isn't necessarily the role that the school board is here to do. We're here to conduct the business for the schools so the school can function, and that's the reasoning behind it. So, I don't know if anybody else has thoughts towards this or.
No, I mean, if you submit a topic, just to be more clear, up to 7 days prior to the agenda, and we will discuss it with you if it doesn't come under the agenda, or if it does. So we'll let you know that it's going to be on the agenda, and if it's not on the agenda, we would direct you of where it needs to go to be discussed. So we're not just going to leave you hanging. And we will be reviewing this decision as time goes on. It's not a permanent, long-term solution. It's more of a short-term solution that we feel needs to take place right now.
For context, I think it'd be helpful to talk a little bit about other school boards and how it's handled. But like I mentioned.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So just sharing that, I think, because we've had, like, for all the other school boards in the valley, do they have citizen comments in 2 periods, or, that's what I'm asking.
in 2 periods?
Well, don't we usually have in the beginning and the end?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just checking if that's customary with all.
It depends on how, no, it's not, it depends on how we set up our agenda, sometimes
Yeah.
we just have it at the beginning, sometimes we have it at the end.
Yeah.
It depends on how you want to format it, we can make
Okay.
our agenda and set it how we want to. So at this time, we're going to pull citizen comments.
Well, again, so how it works too, I guess it's not, we're going to poll. It's what's on our agenda is set by the majority will of the board, meaning a majority vote, this will take a majority vote of the board to do. It's not something that the superintendent's office can dictate, it's not something the chair can dictate. It's the board votes either to affirm, taking it off, or we don't, and citizen comments remains on the agenda. No matter what your board is, whether you're a school board, a planning board, or a select board, it's what goes on the agenda is the majority will of the board to conduct its own business. If we put public comments on there, then we can't restrict public comments. We can restrict the amount of time, but we can't restrict what people say and who says it. So this is just the way we still want people to come and engage with the board. If you have something that you think is legitimate business before our public meeting, just submit it to the chairperson and they'll determine that. So it is, again, the majority of the board that have to do this. So once we're done talking about this, we'll vote as to whether to do this or not. So it's not like people are required to vote one way or the other. It is the majority of the board.
So with that being said, any more discussion? We'll move to vote on that.
Can we say anything?
Oh,
Oh,
here's
this is the citizens' comments, got it. Okay.
So all those in favor, we're removing citizen comments for now? 3 abstaining? Thank you, thank you. So we just have a little bit of housekeeping, we don't really do this. Determine if and when the chairperson votes.
So it's fine that you just want to say whether the chair will vote.
Yeah, well, there's only 4 of us, so. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And determine how votes are recorded, counts of the vote or names, we usually just do counts.
You record names of anybody who either abstains or is negative.
Right. And we'll get to the assignments.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, moving forward then, I would like to take this time to ask Jerry to go over, it's a new session for us, we've just gotten voted in, so in essence, it's a new school board. So I thought it would be a really good time to review with us as well as community and on the Zoom, you know, what is the role of the school board? So I asked Jerry to do a little write-up on that.
Good.
Okay.
So
We talked about this.
we did. I thought it was about the citizen comments. It was also.
We're gonna wait.
I don't know. I think it was like a little
Yeah.
while.
So citizens' comments for this meeting are now off the agenda, although it was on the agenda, but now it's not on the agenda.
That's correct.
So this meeting, nobody had the opportunity to submit citizen comments because we didn't know you were taking it off. the agenda.
That's correct.
So this is just basically a spectator's forum
Off
at
the
this
agenda,
point.
because this agenda
That's
wasn't legal.
So you need to keep going with your agenda.
We are.
Right. Not engaging in citizen comment.
So again, so we're a new board, okay? And we're just starting our session tonight. And we function as a board in the public domain under the laws of New Hampshire. And what our agenda is, regardless of what it says on paper, is always determined by a sitting board at that moment. So at any moment in the future, a person might, any one of us members can address the chair and say, I'd like to make a motion to put citizen comments on the agenda, for instance. We all have the authority and the ability to do that. If it gets seconded, then the majority will from the board will vote to do that. And that's how everything as a board gets passed. And we do nearly all of our sessions in public. Very rarely do we go into non-public session, but non-public session is for very specific reasons. Other than that, we conduct all of our business right out here in the open all the time. What gets put on the agenda is determined by the chairperson, that's our policy, with coordination with the superintendent's office and the superintendent. And that's how we go about our business month to month, so we see what's on the agenda. As chair people, I mean, as board members, we get to submit ourselves 7 days in advance if we want something specifically on the agenda or not. So that's how we get information that we want to put on there. As individual board members on the agenda, we do it the same way. We want something on the agenda, then we submit it to the chairperson or the superintendent or both. And then they decide whether it gets put on there or not. If it doesn't, then that can be overridden by the majority will of the board. We conduct all of our business as the majority will of the board. That doesn't mean that we're not individuals that can be spoken to individually out in the public. We certainly can be. But as board members, we need to be careful with how we might respond to things that people tell us. It's important that we have some separation from the general public and from our employees about how something might be decided that's in front of the board, because we can't make decisions as individual members. So a lot of times we say things as individual members that really has no meaning. The only thing that matters is what the majority of the board decides. It's hard as a board member, it's hard as a member of the community to discuss sometimes things with the community. It's difficult. But we do need to be careful how we respond to things that are told to us. That's basically the long and short of what we do. We do everything as a group when we decide things by majority will. Most of what we do is basically following the budget to make sure that the money that is spent the way it's supposed to be. I mean, that's the bulk of what we do outside of individual things that we might do for policies and things like that. And, I mean, I don't really know what point to add to this one, but
No, it's just like, non-qualifications and behavior issues. Teach it, get involved.
yeah, and we've done it, and as a board, because we do all of our business in public as a board, we're not privy to a lot of information. If you tell something to an individual board member or the chairperson knows things the overall board does not, there's lots of information that we don't even know about. And it's not our role to kind of manage directly the employees that work for the Jackson School District. It's not the functional role of the school board for the most part. Yes, we do the hiring and firing technically, but we don't do the coordination of those things. And a lot of those things we can't even do without the direction of the superintendent. Anyway, where else going with that?
No, just trying to be clear for all of us what our roles and responsibilities are, and what we're mainly here for, which is, fiscally responsible for the school.
Which is our primary function, is to make sure that the money that's appropriated by the legislative body is spent where it's supposed to go, and that's the bulk of what we do.
And the daily behavior issues are with anybody, we can't hear about.
Yeah, whether it's behavior issues, of children or what happens in the school between personnel, those are things that isn't really the role and function of the school board to a large extent, unless it becomes specific issues in which we do, and which is also important why we don't know things that we're not supposed to know ahead of time. Because sometimes we are as the governing body, the judge and jury in certain situations, that the less we know about beforehand, the more fair a decision we'll make when we're faced with those things. Because our role isn't to manage staff, and it's not to certainly manage the behaviors of children.
All right, so I just wanted to make sure that we had, a refresh at this point for us going forward as to what we're responsible for. The last several meetings have gotten marred down in specifics about students and people, and it was really uncomfortable, and it was not necessary, and I can't tell one person to stop versus another person to start, so we're just going to take a pause and do a reset, and that's what we're looking for removing citizen comments at this time. This is taking a reset with the community and getting ourselves back on track as to what we're here for. So I appreciate your patience with this and working with us through this, and we'll continue to move forward. So.
There are two things I wanted to point out. In February, Kevin spoke
to the board and community about board-community relations, and I know that he then shared a document with Susan Ross Parent that was posted. Maybe we can make sure that that's posted.
It was posted out and sent out, we can do it again.
We can make sure that you guys can read it. If you have questions, please send the questions. And then the communication piece, Michael will speak about when we get to the board discussion. There are other actions being taken to get to a place where communication can shift in the future.
All right, great.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
All right, committee assignments, we usually review them.
People can review them if they don't want to submit.
Yeah, if you want to make any changes, we have to get rid of, Keith is obviously off. So I can send out an email, we'll do this by email after the meeting, so we are on the agenda today. I don't see too many changes. And I'll prod you for changes, okay? All right. Manifests, you already figured that out, right? That's on here. All right.
You and Jared, that's fine.
Yeah, and then we have an alternate.
And the alternate is,
What's Keith? It's probably Darlene.
I'm usually pretty quick on
Yeah.
emails.
Does that answer all your housekeeping questions?
does.
Okay, great.
None taken.
I'm not throwing it.
All right, approved minutes from 2/2/23 and 3/2/23.
motion to approve minutes from 2/2 and 3/2/23.
Second?
Any changes, questions, updates? Nope. All those in favor? Great, thank you. Presentation of school programs.
Yes, I'd like to introduce Cynthia Engdahl. She is our technology coordinator, and we've made some exciting new purchases, and she's been doing some great work with kiddos, so she's going to talk a little bit about what she's been doing.
That this is? All right, and I think we also need to publish it in the meeting thing. Then I'll have her. Yes.
Okay, hi, as Bill said, my name is Cynthia Engdahl. I'm the tech facilitator at JGS. I began just this past September. I moved back up to the area after being in Massachusetts for 20 years. I grew up in Freiburg, felt the call of the mountains again, and this job was being advertised, and I got really excited. So I'm very happy to be a part of the JGS community. It's been a lot of fun getting to know the students and the educators in the Jackson Grammar School community. So thank you for having me. So we are pleased that we are able to continue the one-to-one initiative where each student is provided with a Chromebook and each teacher has a laptop. Also, in each room, every room has an Apple TV, a smart board, and a projector, which allows students and teachers to share their work. So from an iPad, they can mirror their work on the iPad. Teachers can teach students how to use certain programs when it's being mirrored like that. Teachers and students can also present from the Chromebooks and their laptops as well. So it's a really nice setup to share information. As of January, students and teachers have access to a cart of 14 new iPads. We call the cart, you can't really see it. The cart is called Mount Washington. There's 14 iPads on there, which helps because there's at the most 14 students, and I think maybe 13 students at the most. So there's one for the teacher to use as well. It's portable, it lives in the NOC. Not that I can remember what the NOC stands for, I just know where it lives. I'm getting there. But teachers and students know that it's available, and they're already beginning to use the cart. So already students in grade 2-3 have created presentations using the iPad and the app called Explain Everything. It's a really great app that allows students to bring voice, pictures, drawings. I like that it lets them have recordings of their voice They've learned about copyright-free images, bring that all together for a video presentation. So you can see on the far left, the student has a drawing of a pair of bears in a tree, and they can bring that into the app so that they can use that as part of their presentation. You can see the student pointing to the country that they are working on. So I'm just going to show you one full presentation that was done by a third grader, using the Explain Everything. That's okay. But I just want to show you how this all comes together with their drawings, pictures, their voice. So it's a pretty awesome app, and actually another project is going to happen shortly with grades 2-3. They're going to be using Explain Everything again, and so is Mrs. Heisler's class. So I'll show you that in a moment. I'm going to take that out. In December, students in grades 2-6 were introduced to coding, and it was exciting to watch them be so engaged that they decided to come back in for recess to continue to learn how to code. Students in K1 have recently begun using the Wet Dry Try app to practice handwriting. So the app mirrors the hands-on experience of writing on a slate chalkboard. So if they don't go in the right direction, it makes them pause so they can start learning how to write their letters in the correct order of the lines. So it's been something that they just started once or twice a week. Jackson Grammar School now has a Padcaster Ultimate Studio available for use. So this uses an iPad, and it allows students to create green screen projects. As you can see, this is in the basement at Jackson Grammar School. There's a green screen in the back. The Padcaster is on a tripod, and there's an iPad seated inside. And we have students learning how to use this. They use an app called Doing that allows students to have layers of pictures, voice, background to create a final product. And as a result, I'm going to skip ahead. As a result of students being really excited to use the iPad, the Padcaster, and the iPads, we've started a little bit more technology integration, and we've created a tech team. 6 students right now. They chose the name JGS Tech Force. One of them came up with the motto, "May the force be with you." So it really is in the beginning stages, but they're very excited. They're willing to meet at recess. And the other day, one of them asked me if we could meet after school. So I said, we'll talk about that. But that's a pretty exciting development, because they're going to learn how to use these iPads and these Chromebooks, how to use the screen mirroring, and they're going to be able to help other students and teachers in the classrooms. The last thing I want to share with you is that there is now an additional page on the Jackson Grammar School website excuse me, And it has a lot of resources for parents, students, and teachers to access. Here is, let me see if the link works. There's a link at the bottom of this presentation. It should go. And there we go. So off to the left are some links. So it's research and helpful sites for students, some links about reading or for reading, and other links for fun, coding, podcasts, fun. So those are some of the things that we've been doing this year, and we have a few more projects coming up. Mrs. Heisler is doing one on the retelling of folk tales, and that's what we're going to be using the green screen and the app called Do Ink for. So, thank you.
Thank you.
No, I've got a lot of news for my principal's report, I'll say that for later.
Okay. Old business, consider first reading of policies. We're gonna read these all together. All right, considering policies 1 through 13.
Motion.
1 through 11.
A motion for first reading of all policies 1 through 13.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, IGDB student publications and IGDDD student productions. See now, okay, IGDF student fundraising activities, IGD student activities fund management, IJOC volunteers, DA employee time and effort reporting and procedures, JH student absences and excuses, BDA board organizational meetings, BCF advisory committee to the board, BEDD rules of order, JVA residency, and 12 personnel policies for non-contracted employees, and 13 personnel policies for principal. All those in favor of moving these to second reading? All right, thank you. Instructional issue? 7A, non-renewal of support staff.
And this is because you're changing your position in the budget for next year, right?
Right, okay, thank you. And then B, election of personnel for 23-24.
Do you need a motion for that?
Yep. Make a motion for
Yep. Motion for non-renewal
non-renewal
of
support
support staff.
staff.
Second.
Any discussion? No? All those in favor? All right. Election of personnel for 23-24.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor? Thank you.
Now you have an additional 7C I put on your seats
Yep.
for the election.
All right, 7C, confirm election of Emily Taylor as a multi-age teacher.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Thank you, Micah, for being on that. All right, business affairs, FYI 22-23 budget status report. We are very close with our budget right now. Anybody have any questions on the budget?
No.
We have no squeak room. FYI budget transfer between functions. That's all right. Any questions? Program assurances from federal formula grants.
This is kind of the rules about accepting federal money. So you get a little bit of Title I money, you get some Title IIA money, sometimes you get some Title IV money. So you have to, if you're going to accept that money, you have to follow the rules. Just what,
As usual.
as usual.
General assurances, requirements, and definitions for participation in federal programs.
So you need to take a motion first to have the chair sign that you're going to follow the rules for the federal grants if you'd like to accept that.
So moved.
Second.
In favor? All right. Consider donation to Friends of the Whitney Community Center. That's from our meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We don't need,
I don't have a figure here, but from the meeting, it was 3,000 and change. Approval of memorandum of understanding for Whitney Center.
So there were changes to the language that were made.
Yep.
And these are the changes. If the changes are approved by the board, we'll get a cleaned up copy brought back to you for signature.
Gail, do you have a
Was
question?
that for the use of the Whitney Center as an emergency shelter for the town?
No,
No.
that, we're still going back and forth on.
So we're going to comment.
I never know when
All right.
Can't make it. Just so you know, your first, your donation is $6,021.59.
Yep.
To the Whitney Center.
Jen, I'd like to clarify something for the audience.
So, yeah.
So, Emily, you would be on the agenda if you
Right.
wanted to discuss some of the emergency authorization things. So you would be part of that discussion. So if you're here and there's something on the agenda that you have information about, we're certainly willing to engage in that conversation and have that talk. So if there's a part of the agenda that you know something about, has something to do with, certainly you're willing, it's be fine for you to
Yeah,
interject.
we were going back and forth.
Now?
I don't think we're talking about the emergency.
So you are, so this,
Yeah.
we're
We are.
right
We
now.
have insurance issues, I know we were talking about those,
Right,
that
as
sort
we
of.
met as a facilities committee to review all of those policies, we made some amendments in the
Yep.
language that we were comfortable with. So I think you have to approve it and then share it back
Yes.
to the town if you agree that the changes we made suffice.
Yeah, and just you.
Did you, so go
Can I
ahead.
talk?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So to clarify the process of all this, so I can't ask you any questions on this now.
Well, if it's about the Whitney Center, and that's what we're discussing,
I can't, because I was told that this is the time to come, to talk, to just, answer any questions you had, ask you some questions, and clarify
So,
questions.
Emily, would that ordinarily occur under citizen comments?
Excuse me?
Would that ordinarily occur under citizen comments?
I don't know.
no. It would
No,
be
no,
this topic.
it would never occur under citizen
Yeah.
comments.
Okay,
Yeah, so this is specific to this topic, and
okay.
your part.
I just don't want you to like vote on this before I ask.
They
you.
will not be voting on
We're
this
not
I
voting
would-
on it tonight.
We wouldn't want to vote on it without talking to you about it either.
And we're not doing that.
So,
So what are what are your questions or comments on that?
well, should we go down through it? Or this is the sort of thing that should be done beforehand, so you have my comments beforehand?
Yeah, this is.
I mean,
This
This
is
is the
committee
time.
work, so this is the language that the facility committee has brought forward to the board for consideration.
okay.
They will consider it. If they feel that this language is appropriate, they will clean up so that you don't have all the other stuff in it. And then that will come back for review. They're not voting on it or accepting or signing this tonight.
Okay.
They're just accepting the changes that the committee made to the language as a board, so the board said, yes, this is the language we want.
Okay, so it sounds like you all need to approve or do whatever. It comes back to
Yes.
me.
Right,
I
Yes,
go back to you.
right.
yes.
And this is kind of month after month.
This could be a
not
committee. You would probably meet with the facilities committee, and then that way those two entities would come together and say, yes, we agree here.
Okay.
So
And then-
is this
Just
specifically
please
about,
clarify, because
This is
this
about-
is
we're doing
jamming up me so much.
is this just about the emergency use of the?
This
Okay,
is
so-
only about the
Right,
emergency
so-
use of this
Right.
building in the case of emergency.
So we had a meeting a couple weeks ago about this. I don't remember exactly when. If you had been there, it probably would have been extremely helpful for us.
Yeah, it would have been great.
Um,
You know where I am.
But that's not where that process starts for us. So right now, we have a memorandum of understanding of uses. It's there, okay? We're looking to change that. we have one, don't we? I mean, that's where we
Not
start.
for, no, we've never had anything in writing with,
Okay,
with
so-
all of these things.
So when we start that process, Emily, you wouldn't be there. We just started that process a couple weeks ago where we're trying to clarify, get the memorandum of understanding done. So we had our initial meeting to start that process. That brings us to having to meet with you at some point to figure out things that shouldn't be in there. So we took our initial stab at it, and now we need to engage with you to figure out more things to do with it. So this is kind of the board's first look at, the whole board's first look at this to have this discussion. And as far as like, this isn't something that would ever be talked about on the agenda under citizen comments. This is an agenda item. You're free to say whatever you want to say towards us. You're not limited in what you would say towards us in any way, shape, or form.
So for this process, we're just starting it. So they just reviewed it, it goes back to you, and then you guys would have a separate subcommittee meeting and finish it. It won't take months.
Okay.
And
It would hopefully not take months.
did you see what came out of that meeting? Did she get a copy of what we did?
No, because you as a whole board
Hadn't decided
have to
they were-
agree that,
yeah.
yes, this is what we want to give back to the town. And if you like what we said, it's done.
Right.
If you don't, then we need to have more conversation. But if you agree with the terms that the school board amended and the language, the way they amended it, as long as it's.
But there was definitely things in there that we didn't know what should be there. So, for instance, like the number of people, because we have what the code says we're allowed for people in here to use the kitchen, which is less than what can be in here as a place of assembly. So it's 100 people that can be in here that's using the kitchen. If it's not using the kitchen, it can be like 248, I think. Those are what the code numbers say. I don't know if exactly there or not, but you know,
I just did that.
and so we don't know where to go with that as far as when it's being used as an emergency shelter. Who gets to decide how many people can come in the building at any point in time? We don't know the answer to that yet.
Well, I think I would say follow the codes.
But I don't know that the town's emergency plan goes along with that or not. So we don't know what you have for, what the town has for its plans for use of this building when there's an emergency.
This is what this is trying to establish.
This is what this is trying to establish.
Yeah.
So, in other
Yeah, I'm
words,
speaking specifically to the memorandum of understanding for the primary emergency shelter.
That's what this is.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what it is.
and so our biggest question really that came out of there, other than the number of people that can be in the building, is who is allowed in the building and who decides who's allowed in the building. And also who starts the process, who declares we're using this building as an emergency shelter. Is that the select board? Is that you? Is it the state? So those kind of things we don't know that we'll need to have clarification on. And you know that.
So please contact me.
Who do I meet with? I mean, I've been told,
So
so
then hold off at the school.
So someone needs to make a motion, if this is what you want to have the committee, the facilities committee use to work with the town.
Yes.
You need to make that
Make a motion,
motion.
get this
Once
going.
you do, then you'll have a meeting where you'll invite Emily and whoever else needs to.
But
be
before you do, I just want to make one comment. Emily, we sat at the Whitney Center
right,
thing and we developed a whole policy. So I'm a little confused that the facilities group is doing the work. Are we overlapping or am I?
No, we took
Oh.
what they developed.
Okay, but I sat at a Whitney's.
Kevin, as the superintendent, was concerned about some of the language in it that needed to be cleaned up.
because
So
it
it went to the facilities committee at that point to clean up the language in a way that was accessible
Try not
to
to
the school
duplicate
district.
efforts.
Yeah, no one's time.
I'm doing nothing right now, I'm just waiting.
So we have something for you, as soon as we vote on it, you'll get it.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Okay.
And then I can
And
be
then we can
gone.
work together.
And I don't have to come to another meeting because I can't get comment.
You want a motion to accept the
On this
draft
topic, we can.
language?
Yes. Motion to accept the draft language, understanding for the Whitney Center. All those in favor? Or second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Favor? Good. So now we have a draft. We're good. And
We'll get that to you. I mean, so there are some like big questions that we have, like, that we do need to we don't know the answer to it. It's like, who gets to decide, who declares the emergency?
Yeah, let's get together.
Right.
Well, we did the last one. So I will wait to hear from somebody.
Here,
Which would be,
here's the draft.
right, who do I call? Someone
Can I
from the
talk?
facilities committee is going to
Yeah,
contact Judy, said I'm saying.
Yes.
Did you start?
So actually, I've got it.
Thank you.
Not on the outside.
Yeah, thank you.
See, confusion there is that there's the Whitney Center Oversight Committee, and then there's the overall facility use of,
Right.
of the whole campus.
Right.
And they're not, I mean, sometimes they're one and the same, sometimes they're not. That's the confusion.
All right, administrative report, superintendent?
Just so people know, the 603 Bright Future Survey is on the SAU United website. We are encouraging people to provide feedback through that tool. Also, on May 24th, we are actually hosting the first annual, hopefully, Mount Washington Valley Youth STEM Expo at Living Shores Aquarium, formerly known as the Science Fair. It is open for students in grades 6 through 12. We have probably about 40 some odd students right now. Biggest difference is that it's no longer an in-school type of event. It's actually students working outside. Students can choose to participate or not, and they can choose to engage with teachers and other mentors to support their projects. And then we'll have inviting 4th, 5th, and 6th graders from across all the SAU United schools. Jackson students will be coming down to see some of the projects that are taking place that day. School to Career Camp registration is open. Right now, again, through grants, there's no cost for students again this year. So those are open to students in grades going into grades 7, 8, 9, and in a couple of cases, it's grades 8, 9, and 10, depending on which of the camps it is. But we have opportunities for construction, culinary, the STEM aviation, health camp, outdoor recreation, photography, robotics, STEM Mars, and Joe Rigsdale is continuing to coordinate that. And then we have May 11th at 6 p.m. is the SAU 9 reorganizational meeting. So hopeful to get people to come to that. And I think Mike is going to talk a little bit, but they are used to, Kevin's continuing to work with Pam to coordinate with New Hampshire Listens to engage in sessions with parents and community. Yeah, I think that's something you're going to talk about, right?
The 11th is the board training, full board training. SAU 9 board meeting on the 11th.
Yes, New Hampshire School Board Association is coming down as well.
For training, school board.
It's also night of the spring concert, so,
Concert, and that's a big thing.
yes. So, the Jackson Spring Concert, so I will be attending the Jackson.
That's a shame.
Unified Art Show, yeah.
Pardon?
The Unified Art Show, yeah.
Can't.
I can't change the SAU meeting at this point.
Yeah. I asked.
That's what Kevin asked me to share. I'm trying to think of anything else from the rest of you.
Yeah.
Principal's report?
Yep.
So our 5th and 6th grade had a wonderful time at the new campus of the Ecology School down in Saco, Maine. The report was that the new buildings are all solar powered and recycling and really into environmental awareness for the students. They had a great time. While the 5-6 was off at Ecology School, we held student-led conferences here for students in grades K through 4. Our Louis Fuchs concert from the Valley, you may have seen it in the paper, returned after 3 years, and a group of talented JGS youngsters went down and sang and played their instruments with the other musicians from across the Valley. A really neat event that I'm glad to see come back. I want to thank our PTO that organized the child care event during our teacher workshop days to allow us to do our work. They took the children down by bus to the Living Shores Aquarium. Many parents volunteered to help out, and from what I hear from the kiddos, it really went well, and it was a really fun activity. So thanks, the PTO has been putting a lot of effort into making sure that when we have early release days, that parents have an option for their children, so we really appreciate that. The DAR, the annual DA Daughters of the American Revolution essay contest, we participated in that again. The women came down on the 11th to recognize the students who wrote their essays this year on the Second Continental Congress. They had to take the role of a delegate at the Congress and write their essay on that. Our 5th grade chapter winner was Maggie Lucy, and our 6th grade winner was Alda Dufalo. They've won the Washington Valley and will go on to the state. Their essays will go to the state level. So congratulations to them. There's a yearbook committee meeting now to prepare for the 6th grade yearbook. They've been meeting to get that ready. And coming up in May, our SAS testing, the state New Hampshire testing, will happen in the month of May. And around that, I was going to say May 11th is our Unified Arts Show. And then on the week of the 15th through the 19th, we will be doing another theater week with Believe in Books with a culminating performance on Friday night. You can look for the time for that. I don't have it right in my head, but it was a lot of fun last year, and we're looking forward to them providing another week for us. Yes, the medieval feast is this week, right? Thursday? But Friday, but it's within school for the children during the school day, isn't it?
Yeah, and our families and everybody are invited.
Oh, okay.
I'll be sending an email invitation. Yeah.
I will look for you earlier to get that information.
Yeah, and we were maybe not all of ourselves.
All right, so busy.
Busy.
Yes.
Wrapping it up. Thank you, Jeff. All right, policy committee, committee reports, just want to know what we have. I don't have a date for our next meeting yet. But
It was
we'll have it
scheduled,
soon.
yes.
Right. Personnel committee, dates, back into it. Facility transportation committee, any updates? No, right?
Other than the memorandum of understanding, we didn't need for that.
Darlene, the high school options committee?
The High School Options Committee. So Erica Corbett-Klein is here this evening, and Kevin. We were the remaining 3 standing in the committee that began quite a few months ago. We were tasked with looking at some possible options for Jackson students when the contract with Conway expires. And we looked at Kennett High School, Freiburg, Gorham, and Robert Frost. I didn't make a lot of copies because I didn't want them to be wasteful. I have some copies that you can take after I'm through. Otherwise, you can sign up, and I'm happy to email something that you're interested in. So I have a 4-page presentation to the board on some comparisons. Certainly, Robert Frost was more challenging for us because their high school program is just beginning this year, so we didn't have like SAT scores and things of that sort. Our task was not to make a recommendation for a particular high school, but to go and research. We also have a list of definitions that could be helpful. When the committee began, Jessica was very involved. She was fantastic with paperwork, with information, and so a lot of this I give her credit for helping us with that. Also have an executive summary that outlines things that we've done, as well as some questions that we have posed to the attorneys and to the superintendents that we are still in the midst of getting information from them back on that. We did not have any focus groups that we thought we were, any listening posts. As the months progressed, with tragedies in December, we felt that it was time to take a pause. So we did that in December. And then as the members of the committee, for various reasons, were not with us any longer, when it was left with just Erica and I, we were looking at the information we had, and we felt that it was best at this point to move a month ahead of our planned May 15th presentation to the board and present this evening the information that we have accumulated, and then suggest to them some listening posts. As a board, we can sit down and discuss what we think is the best way to achieve that. Over the course of the months that I've been involved with this, I had some great conversations Jessica and I talked to different people. She did them separately. I did some separately. I attended a selectmen's meeting. I went to PTA on one of their meetings and tried to share information, tried to get the awareness out. We had James Glazer was part of our committee during that time. Sasha Tracy was part of that. Keith Bradley. And then again, Erica and I were the final two. And Kevin was a great help throughout, always there to answer questions and give me support going forward. So that's where we stand for the school board.
Thank you very much. I know it was a lot to ask for the community, and I appreciate all the community members' help, Jessica, especially you and Erica. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So moving forward, I'm going to work with Darlene after this. We will have some listening posts, try and get the rest of the information filled out, keeping everybody, the three of us, in the loop here to make sure we have it all together. And we'll work as a board. We do need to have at least 1 or 2 listening posts for the community and education-wise as to where we're going, our recommendations. So we'll digest all of this, and then we'll meet again. Erica and Darlene. Carrie, do you have a question?
Just a quick question. I was just curious in the process, I was just curious if we talked specifically or data was gathered from like our past students in particular.
I couldn't quite hear you.
I was just curious as to whether Jackson Grammar School, like past students had been spoken to or data.
We didn't go that far. We had informal conversations with Jackson students. Actually, Malcolm Badger, had agreed to work with us. Jessica and I both spoke to him. He was going to help us. But quite honestly, when, instances in December, we had things scheduled, they were on the calendar. It just did not seem like the time to go into that at that point in time.
Yeah, I just think they would be a great resource, that's all.
No, absolutely. And, that was the intent when I went to the school, back in the beginning of the school year, to say, we can come and ask you questions. Certainly get questions down, get your thoughts, some people, they had children that are in 1st and 2nd grade, so they certainly have a big interest in that going forward, and, a lot of thoughts. But we also looked, and we shared with Tamworth, Bartlett, we had, 2 of the board members from Bartlett were here in January, had other conversations with them, we're sharing information, getting this similar kind of input. Some places maybe looking at other schools that we didn't because of geographic concerns.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you guys very much. This is a lot of work. I appreciate it. And it won't be wasted. It's a good use. All right. DEI.
All right, so staff participated in 2 trainings with New Hampshire Listens. There's another professional development that's going to happen between July and November, so we're officially inside this contract that the DEI committee and the board approved moving forward with. The other piece of the puzzle is that we have, committed to doing a board training, board DEI training, and what I wanted to bring up was whether or not we want to do that when we have a full board. If we want to do it as the current board, as the 4 of us, or wait until we have a 5th person. I would recommend we wait for that 5th person. We did, inside the contract, we are supposedly doing that training this year, but we can ask New Hampshire Listens to extend it to next year. This is a multi-school year contract, so that shouldn't be a problem. But I just wanted to bring it to all of us for a choice on that, because we're going to do it. I think that having a whole board and making sure that next person is integral in this conversation is pretty key.
Yeah, if we don't get somebody in the next 6 to 8 weeks, after we start advertising, then we'll make a decision, because we'd also need to set our goal setting session. As well, so it might be timely to have it at the same time.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so we'll wait. I did reach out to her, so.
Great. So waiting with the intent that if we don't have someone in 6 to 8 weeks, we might go forward. So
Yeah,
give it 2 months.
Forever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. And then I'll hop in now as well.
Yep.
About civic. Okay. So, over the past couple months, there have been a lot of things happening in our school community, as we all know, and really looking at how the board could be concerned about this and then using appropriate board level actions and choices to be able to move forward on that. So inside of that, what I want to share is that a lot of things are happening. Not all of them are publicly known. Not all of them can be publicly known. So there's sort of 3 tiers of actions. There's what we are putting together with New Hampshire Listens, which is, I'll speak about in a moment, which will be a series of events with the community with the idea of really focusing on like community civic health, which is going to be a place where people can speak really freely about really freely within the construct of, what is an appropriate level of information to be sharing in a small town, and how to also learn how to talk about the cultural questions that people have in a way that it can be an open dialogue. At the same time, there are some pieces happening, like I said, outside the public eye. We've also asked for support for some people looking in from the outside at what some processes have been at Jackson Grammar School. So all of that's happening.
Wait, I'm sorry, can you repeat what you just said?
Yeah. So there's 3 things.
No, but just the last part about the processes of something?
Yeah, so we're also looking for some outside support. Some people from the outside are also looking in and looking at some of our processes and jumping in to evaluate some pieces. And that's all I can share about that right now. So that's important for us to be able to tell that to you all. And in terms of what's happening with New Hampshire Listens, which is the community event, I'm going to look at this so that I represent it correctly. Michelle Holt-Shannon, who's the director of New Hampshire Listens, is going to host community conversations that are linked to our strategic plan. And we're also going to be using the Civic Health Toolkit, which is a guide to building community and bridging divides. So the goal of these facilitated conversations are to create some shared listening and learning and develop relationships that can strengthen educational quality efforts and dialogue district-wide. That might sound like a lot of jargon for me reading it. It feels like a lot of jargon. I think that the bottom line is that we're trying to have community events, as I said, with some structure to them, so that we can, we are hearing that things are happening in this community. The board is not being oblique to that, and we're trying really hard to think about what is the way that we can best move forward. And to, Jen's point and Jerry's point about saying, how can we manage this so that we're not getting a bunch of information, which makes it so that we actually can't function as a board. And that's definitely for me, it's a new space to be in, and really working on saying, how do we speak up and acknowledge that things are happening, and at the same time, make sure that we're not hamstringing our efforts or doing things that are actually not legal or would put other pieces of the puzzle in jeopardy. So our first step for this is we're going to invite a group of caregivers, educators, and community members, about 6 to 8 people, to be part of a planning meeting on Tuesday, May 9th, and that group is going to plan and schedule the community conversations with Michelle Holt-Shannon. So that's the next step, and then we'll be able to move forward, and we're trying to do this in a very time-sensitive way so that there can be a forum for that dialogue.
Who's going to pick those 6 to 8 people?
If you're interested, you can send me an email within the next 2 days, please.
Questions?
Oh, I just had a comment. I just think it's interesting that, thank you for sharing what you said. So you mentioned creating shared listening, and also how you guys, the board, can speak up. It feels uncomfortable for me. We've been told we can't speak tonight, and we're going to go into these series of community events about civic health and creating shared listening. I didn't write everything down, that's what I have, but I personally feel upset and like, wow, no more citizens' comments. I've never heard of such a thing. I wonder if other schools in our district are doing this.
Yes, some are doing it in
And
our district.
has it been successful?
I'm not happy about it either, but the past several meetings that have happened, there's been information that's been shared that it gets to be too personal, and I may not know that it's too personal, I don't know everything that's going on, but it can't go on. It's been meeting after meeting where we're hearing from parents that specifically gets into things that either I have to tell them to stop, and I'm not good at that, right? I'm like, you can't speak anymore, which I find that would be very rude and not be helpful as well. So we just have to take a step back as a board to say, just for, we're going to review it every month, and hopefully our climate gets better, And as a board, we also need to learn, like, where's our stopgap as well? Like, this is territory, fortunately, we've never been into in the past 15 years that I've been here, that we've had to do this or even think of this. But there is just too much personal information that's being shared at school board meetings, and it cannot happen
I
anymore.
appreciate
So
that.
I just have to make a decision to say, okay, we can't discuss that. So I do want to hear from people, submit what you'd like to talk to 7 days prior to have that conversation, depending on what it's about, and or helping somebody decide what is the right channel to take for the topic that they would like to talk about.
So I appreciate that, Jen, but do you think, I'll speak for myself, that would have been good information for me to have prior to coming tonight?
We
To
didn't have a
come
board
here-
prior tonight.
Pardon?
We were just voted in, so we had to start the meeting. We just voted on chair and such. We couldn't make that decision before tonight when we got here, before we elected board members into the position. So it's uncomfortable, yes, and it was unfortunate that it had to happen in that process, but that's how it had to happen to get the ball rolling.
Is this a public comment section?
No.
Okay, can I ask a clarifying question to what
So
Micah
what
said?
Micah said?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Micah, there's gonna be the New Hampshire Listens thing. And then there's something where you guys are having someone look at you, but we can't know about who that is. Like someone's looking at you, someone from outside.
What I'm trying to share with you is that we're not here saying, hey, let's have a meeting. There are other pieces of the puzzle that are happening that are outside the public view.
Okay, so that's the
That's-
second thing.
yeah,
What's
I
the
mean,
third thing?
Actually, I would say both of those things let's break down to two things. Things are happening outside the public view. Publicly, we're gonna have a New Hampshire Listens.
Okay.
Outside the public view includes that we've reached out for additional support.
Okay.
And people, like outsiders looking at what our process is. So that also comes to like the SAU wide board training session that's happening. And several boards are going through this process right now of getting crystal clear on what is board member responsibility and how to maintain that. So all of this stuff is happening, and it is, it's difficult to sit on this side of the aisle and say, hey, here's where this limit is. And we're trying to navigate that through and say, so here's what's public and here's also what's happening in the background, which I know sounds very nebulous and is what we can share.
Okay, and then is there a third thing?
No, I was just collapsing those two.
Thank you.
I just want to say that this is kind of the topic we're on in the agenda here. We're really hoping to still engage with the community. We're just asking that to do so, to get put on the agenda for now to do that. And then when we're discussing individual items, I'm pretty sure we're going to be open to having this kind of dialogue back and forth, specifically to the agenda item that we're talking about. We're hoping to still do that, to still engage with you when you're here doing this. Ask questions if you don't understand something we're talking about or didn't hear properly what we said. We're still hoping to kind of allow for that. The only change is that public comment is no longer on the agenda. In every other way on the agenda, we'll still probably behave exactly the way we did before. In other words, if it's appropriate to the agenda item, we will entertain questions, we'll entertain comments, and like to engage. When it comes to public comments, we still want people to make public comments. It's just the function to do that now is going to be by getting put on the agenda to do so. That's the only difference. So if you had a public comment to make, the way to do that in the future is going to be submitted as an agenda item, and then if it's appropriate for discussion in public at the board, we will have that discussion, again, with people making those comments and questions and suggestions.
Who decides if it's appropriate for the entire?
That'll be between the chairperson and the superintendent. Just like every other agenda item that gets put onto our agenda. And as far as has this happened before, there's been years where our select board took public comments off of their meetings for similar reasons to why we're doing it now. So this is nothing new. This is boards all over the state do this all the time. We're not required.
School boards?
School boards as well. We're not required to have public comments on our agenda. That is at the will of the majority of the board.
Can I make a comment about that? Or, since that's the topic of the evening? Like, can I say something about that?
Your committee reports, and you can decide to take comment, but you did vote not to have comment.
I
But
mean,
now
accepted-
you're taking some
you
comments.
accepted
No,
some
so
comments.
we're just trying to clarify specifically why we're not having
Yeah, it comes down to what's an agenda item, and what isn't.
Yeah, right.
This kind of overlapped into a gray area because of what we're talking about here.
I mean, part of what I'm concerned about is you're taking some comments but not others, and that's just discriminatory, actually.
If
And
there,
it's actually discriminatory under the school board, the New Hampshire school board policies, which if you'll give me a moment, I'll actually read that to you so you can see that you're in dangerous territory. And I just want to express that to you because I know you guys care and you're trying to do the right thing. And I am concerned because you're really having a chilling effect on participation of both citizens, taxpayers, and parents. So I don't think you want to do that. You had such a liberal policy up until now. For you to do this drastic change, I think is coming from a place of fear and concern. And I get that this is difficult and challenging, but that's democracy and it's scary. But if you, I think we're going to a hard place. So, I mean, I'll write it up if you want. I'll put a letter.
can you do that?
Yeah,
I want to get into it tonight. Okay, thank you.
Great.
If a letter is submitted, will you distribute it? Because previously, like Jess's letter from a couple months ago wasn't distributed, and
It was not distributed. You have to submit it to like the Jackson News or the newspaper because I've submitted 2 letters that did not want to submit.
But if a letter is submitted to all of you, doesn't it have to be part of it? Or of the documentation on it, like things that were covered that night?
No, so it would depend upon how, for instance, if someone were to send an email to all the board members as one email, and the board never discussed it as a board, or responded to you, reply all, then if one of the board members, whoever responds to reply all of that, that would have to then be a matter of public record. But just by sending emails or letters to the board, that doesn't automatically become a matter of public record. If it's considered as a full board, then it is a matter of public
But
record.
it was considered at the board meeting by the full board. It was part of the discussion that night. And it was referenced in the discussion specifically to Jess's letter. But then it wasn't made public. So I'm just trying to clarify, like, in terms of what is allowed to be public and what is not, and around the rules
Well,
of
if you're
how
talking
to
specifically about
communicate.
Jess's letter, that should have become a matter of minutes for that night.
It
If
didn't.
then we need to correct that.
That would be awesome. So if it was submitted and then it's discussed, it would be public record? And are there other ways that there's,
So if you want something, if you want to be part of the agenda, you would submit that request to the chairperson or the superintendent. They would decide in collaboration, as they do every single agenda item that comes before us, every single meeting, they would decide whether it gets on the agenda or not. Now, let's say you weren't happy with them not putting that on the agenda. You could submit it to us as individuals on the board, and then one of us could make a motion during the meeting to have it become part of the agenda. If the majority, that was seconded, and then the majority of the board voted to have that on the agenda, we would talk about it on the agenda.
Unless it's non-public. Unless it's.
Well, it would only be non-public if the board decided to go into non-public.
Well, they're saying it's a non-public issue.
If it's a non-public issue, well, it wouldn't matter. It doesn't, so again, if what goes on the agenda and what we discuss is at the majority will of the board, even if it should be a non-public, it doesn't mean that we have to go into non-public to discuss it. We could still decide to do it. It wouldn't be smart to do that, it would be pretty stupid, but it's still something that we can do. Whether or not we go into something non-public or not, again, is only decided by the majority of the board.
so tonight, just to clarify around that point specifically, you've continued to refer to the fact that if something is on the agenda for tonight, then it can be discussed, but citizen comments is on the agenda for tonight, and we weren't given an opportunity to have 7 days, so I can appreciate this as a concept next meeting, but it seems incredibly discriminatory and just really disrespectful to have us show up tonight, and because on your agenda is citizen comments, and then announce that you're not.
So is that a cause for you to be aggravated and annoyed with us? Absolutely it is. And that's how it can be taken. But again, as Jen said earlier, this is our first meeting as a board. We couldn't take it off the agenda before because we weren't a board before. And so it has to start somewhere. And this board decided, so it doesn't matter what's on the agenda. Technically, what gets written on the agenda, what gets posted on the agenda. whatever's on the agenda is always at the will of the majority of the board. We can take things off of it and put things on it tonight. That's not necessarily the smartest thing to do, and I'm not saying that that's going to alleviate anger and tensions that's created. Absolutely, we understand that it's going to, that this isn't the best of solutions and isn't the best of idea, and that you should be mad at us for it. We get that. But
Can I ask that you vote to add the citizen comments that are on the agenda for the remaining part of the agenda back on, and ask if you vote on it, given, like, out of respect for the people that have showed up tonight and paid babysitters and moved work schedule?
well, I don't think that would be smart, given what Jess
I
said
just asked
about
you to
being
vote on
straightforward
it.
about discussion. We've already gone past probably the gray area that we're in the agenda item that we're discussing. But communication is an important part of that, and that's what all this really comes down to. I think that what we have to leave it at is that what we're asking, we're not asking to disengage from the community. We're still hoping to be engaging with the community. We're just asking that if you, what would previously be citizen comments, we're asking you to submit that request as an agenda item now.
Can you answer her question though, about voting on it?
He did.
I don't think you did.
Or didn't?
We've already moved past it, we've already decided as a board, we've already made a vote on it.
There's a
Right,
second.
but we're not, yeah.
As a board, you have to vote on turning me down, or does one person get to elect that individually, or how is it decided?
So we voted at the beginning to remove citizen comments from our agendas moving forward. That's what we've done.
So I'll step in here that I think that it's a highly confusing subject to say we're gonna vote, which I abstained from, to remove citizen comments moving forward. And this oblique, really gray area space of like, does moving forward mean tonight? I understand the point that we were not a board and this, that, and the other. And I fully hear Yetta saying, hey, we came and we're in this. So I don't personally feel comfortable with how we decided to do this. And it does feel like at a time where things feel more heightened in our town, that we're adding aggravation versus what we're trying to do is add more empathy and clarity and boundaries. So I don't have a solution for that, but I need to speak up to that personally, because I don't feel like like the integrity feels missing inside of that.
I appreciate that, I do, but after the last several meetings, we had to make a stand, and I did ask Kevin weeks ago if we could remove the citizen comments, but we weren't on board at the time, so that I couldn't do that prior to the meeting.
Yeah.
So I knew that, tonight would be, unfortunate that you may come with, things that you wanted to say, but I had to put a stake in the ground for reasons that I know that we can't have public comments at this time, and that's all I can say at this time, that this was the best choice that I could make for the community at this time, moving forward to get us back on the right track as to what is discussed at school board meetings. So I'd like to keep it at stance right now that we do not take citizen comments for this meeting. And it's unfortunate, I'm sorry, and you can be mad at me and mad at myself, but this is how I feel that it's best to move forward.
And so does Jen get to decide alone, or do you have to, I don't understand.
Well, we're staying with the vote that we made earlier this evening about no citizen comments. So there's no reason to vote again on it.
Oh, someone can make a
Someone
motion.
from the,
Someone can make, one of us can make a motion to do that.
Just can decide.
Do you want to make a motion?
it would have to be one of the three of you, it would have to be someone
I don't
from the
want it.
prevailing side, and a motion to reconsider, something like that in this meeting.
That's not actually true either. But,
Yeah, that's how we usually.
well, that's a Robert's rule, so that's not an actual.
So it has to be it has to be someone who voted.
No, it doesn't. At any point, a board member can make a motion. to do
Okay,
that.
I make a motion to open citizen comments for this meeting, and work to remove them moving forward.
Anyone second it? Thank you, Michael.
I'm gonna add to this communication piece that this is something I've been working with Kevin on, and I think that what's important is that this transcends jargon when we have these conversations, because what's really important is that we all want to be in dialogue, and so we need to have some better governors on what that dialogue is so people can be free, right? So that we're not coming up against the boundaries. That's my goal, and I will sit in this seat really committed to that.
versus having things be confusing, because that doesn't feel like it's gonna work for anyone.
It's all our fault, that's,
Yeah.
and we're trying to make steps in that direction. All right.
I'm just curious where you guys are 4 members now, when a voting becomes a tie or something, what's the policy or procedure on that? If you were to have a tie on something, I just all of a sudden was looking at 4 of you sitting up here.
So I think that's a great question, because it's a good thing for us to understand the board members.
Yeah, I can see it.
So when there is a tie vote, the motion doesn't pass. So whatever the motion is for doesn't pass. Now, let's say it's for something that the motion has to pass for.
But it just has to pass.
Yeah, there's items, so sometimes things that there's only, voting yes is the only way to go.
Or no.
Like an example?
Or no, there's sometimes, it came up recently at an SAU9 meeting, or a common school board meeting actually, where you had to pass something. So what that means you have to do is you sit there until it passes. Or you're not fulfilling your, or the district can't go on with its business. But the simple answer is when it's a tie, the motion doesn't pass.
Okay. So at the beginning of the meeting, 2 of you had voted yes and 2 of you had voted no. That motion was
Three.
it would clear, just to clarify. Okay.
Okay.
What happened, Jim? Can I just hire
One
him?
more thing, Michael was reporting, and then I know you're going on to the safety committee, but I want to encourage everybody to go online. It's the Carsey School of Public Policy at UNH. They just developed this civic health toolkit. It is phenomenal. It will be brought here to the community. Your board has made that commitment to really support the health of your community so that your school can be healthy. And the issues and concerns that everyone is bringing up will be addressed through this work. But dive into, there's some easy things you can look at really quick, like quick videos, kind of overviews, or you could geek out like Emily probably has and I have, and get like so lost in it that you're there for a day. There's a lot of really good information, so I encourage you to do that, so you have a better understanding of what Michael was reporting on.
Thank you. Thanks. All right, safety committee,
Nothing new.
Whitney Center.
The Whitney Center is getting a lot of use. The program committee for the Whitney Centers, lots of activities. In fact, tomorrow night I'm going to learn how to use my iPhone to take pictures. So they're getting out in the community and trying to sponsor a lot of activities, a lot of community events, and so that's a good thing. And they're doing well balancing it with the school. I think there's pretty good communication there. I have not heard to the contrary. So assuming that things are going well, and progress with that and continue to see the usage.
Great. I think there's something on Wednesday night.
There's a brochure right on that table up by with a list of all of the spring offerings.
Nice.
Check them out.
Strategic plan?
Nothing.
All right, board discussion, May 15th is the next date.
I have a question about that.
May 15th?
Yeah.
Yep.
Has the Bartlett board also voted to have no citizen comment?
I have not engaged with them on that. I haven't asked them.
And so as part of the Jackson Bartlett joint board meeting, would they have citizen comments on their agenda?
I think Bartlett has.
Bartlett,
It's in
that
Bartlett.
agenda has not been developed. Bartlett has well, they don't have citizen comment, they have public comment, it's slightly different.
But I don't think during our joint meetings, do we have?
It might not normally be on the
It
agenda.
doesn't usually have citizen comments. It's just board to board.
So on our joint board, whatever that is, if we have citizen comments, it'll have citizen comments on it. If it doesn't, then it won't.
I don't think it does.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yep. All right, the school board vacancy, I recommend at this time that we proceed with our usual stance of advertising at this point. So we usually put a 2-week notice out.
Okay.
All right. And then we do have a non-public this evening.
Yep.
Right.
What's it not public for?
Well, it's not public.
I know, but what's it for?
Us.
Yeah.
I know.
Personnel and student matter.
I make a motion to go to non-public for pursuant to RSA 91A3 and paragraph 2.
Second, you
Second.
roll call.
All those in favor?
It's a roll